Welcome to the program. In his New Year message, President Bola Tinubu spoke to the difficulties faced by many Nigerians, including the challenge of food production, high cost of food, and poverty. According to statistics, multidimensional poverty in the country stands at over 70%. This begs the question, how far has the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation fared in the hunger reduction program of the government? The ministry has been immersed in high-level fraud and mismanagement allegations by previous ministers and officials. How does this affect the running of a very important institution at a time such as this? I'm delighted to have the Minister of State for Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Honorable Tanko Sununu, to shed light on the government's hunger reduction program efforts. A few months ago, Sununu was the Minister of Education, Minister of State for Education, and previously the Chairman House Committee on Health. Thank you so much for joining us on Rise Prime Time.
Thank you for having me in the prime time.
And Happy New Year too.
Thank you. Happy New Year to all Nigerians, and we pray that 2025 will be a year that Nigeria will renew its hope and the aspiration and mandate of the president will be achieved.
All right, let's get right into it. As a Minister of State in charge of poverty alleviation, how do you define poverty? Who is poor in Nigeria of today, and what statistics are you working with? How many people are we talking about? Because this helps us to understand the framework with which you are dealing with this very critical issue.
Well, you see, when you talk of really poverty and who is poor man, it can be a relative definition, and also in some certain areas you see an obsolete definition of poverty, because someone may be poor in one circumstances, but in the other circumstances he may not be poor. You understand? But generally, the basis of poverty is ignorance. Wherever you have ignorance, it comes with a triad of disease, and then loss of opportunities. So that is the basic foundation of it. Now, one may be poor in one area, but if you move to another area, depending on the level of understanding of that society of what poverty means, some are contented with little they have. But overall, you have to look at major factors that affect life. How far are average humans enjoying such resources?
So
education, good health care, the ability to move about and do a normal business, and also coupled with that with a strong human right protection.
So in the work that you do in the ministry, we're trying to understand who specifically you're working with, the criteria, the category, and how you arrive at that number of people.
You see, in our ministry, when you talk about the whole ministry itself, you see, humanitarian crisis is something else. One may be extremely rich today, but unfortunately tomorrow he can wake up to be a poor because of humanitarian crisis, whether being it natural or man-made. For example, many people, they are rich, have overnight been attacked in their village and they are displaced. Somebody will move out of his house with only clothes he's wearing. And by the time he comes back, the house is either burnt down or everything has been stolen. So in that regard, what we do is to continue to monitor and track the progress of our society in terms of this thing. And also, it's not a permanent label to say one is poor. One may be poor today, but along the line, he might be educated, and then he will get an opportunity. That opportunity will also move him from one lowest level of poverty to average or even to the highest level.
Right. So for the government, what is the number you are working with? From your research, how many Nigerians today are defined as poor?
Well, the average if you look at the international community and several reports, because of so many issues that has to do with the insurgency over the years, that has also to do with the natural disaster, that also has to do with the global, not only Nigeria, economic crisis that is hitting the addition. The value is almost above 30%.
And what is your overarching strategy to address this issue?
Our strategy is, first of all, as a ministry, you know, you have just mentioned what happened in the immediate past. And when we came into the ministry, we have to look at our records and see what are the strengths and weaknesses of that ministry, so that we can leverage on the strength of the ministry while trying to subdue or even eliminate completely the weaknesses of that ministry. So that will now give us a guide on how to move forward. One of the major challenges of that ministry, which we mentioned, is whether local or international, is the issue of trust, which you have mentioned earlier because of so many issues here.
Yeah,
there are a lot of loss of trust in that regard.
Yeah, we will come to that. You know. I would like you to walk us through what you do. So, for instance, you draw up a list.
You see,
of 4 people. So, what do you do?
Yes, if you look at the ministry itself, is divided into a lot of. Apart from main ministry, we have other MDAs that are parastatal under the ministry. The ministry itself, as a humanitarian ministry, is saddled with responsibility of developing policy in terms of having human face in our interactions, and also the policy that will lead to marked reduction of poverty, improving the prosperity of Nigerians.
For example?
That's one of our main goals. It's also, for example, in this regard, when we came, we realized that the whole Nigeria itself, under the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, there is a lot of discoordination between national and subnational level. And in fact, that is what we are working now to see how can we bring the umbrella of all of us together, from the local government to the federal government, so that we can work a policy that is implemented within the ministry will be owned by all of us. And then it will now be used as a yardstick for assessing and tracking our successes.
It's an important point that you make, because in Nigeria, we have so many ministry departments and agencies, some of them doing similar work, you know, and yet the government, they are on the payroll of government, and in the process you see that a lot of money is wasted. So here that you're talking about, you know, merging what you do and making sure that it's more functional, how do you then measure the success of what you are doing?
Well, we are going to measure the success on what we want based on the fact that we are going to introduce or strengthen our transparency criteria. Unlike before, the money are just given anyhow. There is a directive from the Central Bank of Nigeria that everybody who is going to, anybody that is going to benefit from palliative or intervention through government safety nets must have at least a digital identity. And this digital identity means is something that you can be recognized with in terms of having your telephone number. You must also have at least a BBN number and account number. And seriously, we are working. People will say it's really not everybody will have. Quite agree. That's a genuinely argument. But we are also working to ensure that at level of local government, right from the ward, to the level of the federal government, we are working together with the World Bank and other agencies of government like NIMSI to ensure that those digital identity are provided with immediate effect, so that we ensure that our accountability framework is something. But for example, now, if we say you have empowered 10 million people, in a Western society will be asked, where is the evidence? And that evidence must stand the test of time. Where that is not reproducible, it becomes doubtful, and a lot of issues will be raised, and people will doubt even whether it happens or not.
So, I mean, you've already touched on it. The ministry was created by President Muhammadu Buhari. And since that time, the impression has always been that it's just a pipeline for wasting public money. The former minister, Sadiya Farouk, is in EFCC net, or was in EFCC net, over allegations of mishandling some 37 billion naira. We hear investigations are ongoing. The minister under President Bola Tinubu Betedu was also involved in some kind of paying money into private accounts, over 500 million naira. There was also the national coordinator of the National Social Investment Program, Halima Shehu, was arrested for moving 44 billion naira from municipal account to private accounts. It's just so much money that we are talking about. So now you can understand why a lot of Nigerians feel that this is so sickening and scandalous. So that public trust has been broken. Now that you are Minister of State, can you ensure us, or can you give the assurance that all that has changed?
Well, I will give you the assurance that things has changed for the fact that we have a president who is Democrat, listening, and who also play by the rules of the game itself. For instance, you've mentioned some of those that I have mentioned were prosecuted or detected after the exit of their DC. But right now, while the government is ongoing, there was accusations. And that accusation led to even president to solve the problem, deploying 2 ministers in that ministry, so that you can have a strong oversight and you can have a better way of relating with people. And that's why I told you that we quite agree that our major challenges is that trust on the human face, both at local and international level. And people believe that that ministry is just a pipeline, or that, as you rightly mentioned. But the president wants to change that narrative to make it more effective, more robust, so that it can serve as a strong buffer, most especially now that there are a lot of ongoing reforms. With those reforms, there is need for a strong buffer to absorb much shock that Nigerians are moving into. And then secondly also, if you look at also when you put the international report together, the president has to also act first to ensure that we have a stronger distance. Just some few days ago, the United Nations World Food Program anticipated that in the 2025, over 30.33 million Nigerians will suffer hunger, and some with 1.8 million being severely affected. So these are all issues that the president will also look at this clearly, that look, we must do something. And the only way we can do something is to give a new face to that ministry that would earn people trust, that would earn people confidence, that once you mention, you can also add this thing. And then on our own part, we came down and we sat down, we look at what are the gaps. Okay. And I mentioned one of that gap is the fact that in terms of humanitarian affairs, completely, the country is disjointed. There was, for example, in all the ministries, when I was in education, when I was on the IS, we have National Council on Education, National Council on Health, which is not in existence in the humanitarian aspect. Therefore, there is no that central coordinating body that will develop policy, that will have buy-in of everybody, and then we execute it together. And that's the first thing, one of the few things that very soon will come up with, so that we can now come up with the Council on Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Reduction, so that all of us together, we can align as a country. So
you are new in this ministry, and you must have done the background work as you came in.
Yes.
How many people specifically has this ministry impacted since inception?
You see, as I mentioned, when you look at the condition, let's say for example, the conditional cash transfer, which is supposed to target at least 15 million households. And when you define a household is a composition of at least 5 people in a family. When you terms that you have over 75 million Nigerians, they are supposed to be affected with. But unfortunately, due to setting this in, only, and then they were taken in tranches. We're taking up the tranches, 5 million were touched, and it was divided into 3 tranches. Now, when the first 5 million were paid the first tranche, there was a lot of outcry that money was mismanaged, there is no proper record, there is no evidence, everything. And then the directive from CBN came that each one must have the digital identity I've mentioned. Now, when that digital identity was now introduced, only 1.4 million had their second and third tranches. Now, apart from that also, we have various records in terms of our National Social Register. The Empower is there. For example, the Empower, it has affected many Nigerians, even though we have some few challenges that we are trying to address. We also have the Government Enterprises and Empowerment Program, the GEEP, and then we have also conditional cash transfer. We also have the homegrown feeding programs that we are all trying to see how we can get them coordinated and agree with what one in international best practices.
Right. So do you sincerely believe that giving out handouts or cash to people is a sustainable way to fight poverty?
No. No. In the whole world.
No, let's talk about Nigeria.
I'm talking about even in Nigeria, it's not. But you see, at any time, you must have people who require urgent attention. And those urgent attentions are also as good as Nigerian, like any other person who doesn't want to require that urgent attention.
So when do you start and exit people? When do you start and exit people? So if it's urgent attention, when do you start and exit people from the program?
We start and exit. Whenever you are enrolled, it has two components. The stopgap, which we are giving you, the job creation that is also going to introduce, and then a linkage between that job that is created to the industry or our labor market. Let me take, for example, now. We've just, when we came in, we have a lot of IDPs who are one of the internally displaced persons who are one of the people that are beneficiaries of the ministry. So there is a program that we call Renewed Hope Agricultural Empowerment Project Initiative, the HAPI. And then that program is aimed at building the capacity of household of internally displaced person, and we have put them into clusters. We had a joint venture between the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Federal Ministry of Agriculture, with also NALDA as a parastatal of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, and then National Deputy Chief Commission as our own parastatal. The four were working as in a quadruple way, so that we have done the first few pilot. I was in Plateau State, where I flagged off the harvesting of almost 150 hectares of land that was harvested, that was cultivated by those internally displaced persons. We have another one in Borno State, and many other places with those things. So the essence is that whatever they have harvested, they will be entitled to take 30% of it. And then 70% of it will be purchased by off-takers, that's the government, so that one will now serve as a cash component for it. And that commission, they have a food which they have cultivated that can take them over the year, and they also have a cash component that they can be introduced in a skill acquisition that we're also going to train them so that they can. As soon as that is done, we exited them. So to this. And then for graduates who are youth, we are also coming up with a program that we are starting early this year, which means we are taking 3 areas of consideration. We are taking the renewable energy, we are also taking the food security because of the fact I mentioned earlier, and also the one of the 8 points of agenda of Mr. President is to ensure food security in the country. We are also taking automobile. And we are into discussion whereby we are going to see how we can get a couple of graduates that we are going to train, arm them with technological know-how of irrigation. Because we have seen how flood devastated this Nigeria with a lot of loss in terms of our food stock. So we have to see how we can gather them together, empower them, let them also produce in terms of irrigation farming, and then we join them with rice millers who are the off-takers of that program. Okay. In some areas like Jos, Benue, and others that we can work in terms of greenhouses, we have a lot of graduates who are into that, who are also willing to go, but they don't have that capital. We're also going to work them and engage them so that they can also develop in that. I
have to ask you, why did you accept this job as a Minister of State, and what difference do you think you can make compared to the previous ministers there?
Compared to Minister of Education?
No, I said, why did you accept this job, take up this job as a Minister of State in this ministry, and what difference do you think you can make?
Well, why I took it is really, I'm a loyalist of All Progressive Congress. I'm also a loyalist to the President. And the President has, the President has the prerogative of power to assign you to where you think that you can perform well. Why I took it is for me to address that challenge, to say that Mr. President has confidence in me. He needs something to do, to be done. And he believes that I'm one of the people that can do it. So I wholeheartedly took it upon myself that I can do it, and I pray to God that we also succeed in doing that. And then making it different from others is to see that we've gone through the history, the narrative, and trajectory of that ministry. Where were errors committed? And what led to this thing? Let me say one thing. Of all these issues that have been mentioned before, you find that the technocrats, ministers gone, 1, 2, 3, but not mention of permanent secretaries were made. You understand? That's one of my major findings.
So
and I tried to
the
find
permanent
what is
secretaries are civil servants.
Yes,
so,
they are civil servants, but they are also the accounting officers.
So what point are you making?
Was it that really that their advice is not being respected?
Okay.
Or they are not working with them? So for me now, I have to listen to technocrats who knows the in and out of brain of the ministry, who is also versed in financial regulation, and who knows how to go about it. So that together we can work, while also I'm trying to limit the excesses that may lead to further loss.
So you're saying there is a disconnect usually or sometimes between
sometimes,
the minister and the civil servants that head the ministry.
Yes, if I am your accounting officer and I'm accused, then you are not mentioned. It means I've used my veto power or anything to subdue. And that is what we are not going to accept, and that's what we are not going to do. We've agreed, the two of us, we are going to work with all the technocrats of the ministry to look at it and also to respect the financial regulations of the country.
But I'm sure.
And also, the other issue that we believe we are going to have a third eye in all we are doing. We make it open. Our third eye is going to be the journalists and then the non-governmental organization and civil society group, who we are going to work with them in a transparent manner so that they can see and they can amplify what we are doing, rather than waiting for us to hear something happen before we are called to this. So that's it. And that's why even when we went to, I was in, Minister was in Borno State to share palliative purchased by ECOWAS for the victims of the flood disaster. We also have another one in Bauchi too. Civil society were well represented. The Red Cross Society was also there. So they can also serve as transparency. While generated, we generate the list with State Emergency Management Agency. They verified the list, and then they also took part in the distribution of all those palliatives.
A quick question still on the civil service.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're aware that for some ministers, we've heard in the past, they complain that, sometimes it's as if some of the civil servants set a trap for you because you are new to the system, and so you fall into this trap and then you get into trouble. So what it implies is that also the civil servants can be problematic to the government, to the system itself.
Well, I think all about it may be misperception or so. You see, the whole process is about due processes, where there is actually apparently a clash between the political officers and civil servant always is the rate of doing things.
Right.
While the due process may take some period before it gets, the average politician is after result. You understand? In doing that result, a lot of things are being skipped or not even documented. It will be done, it will have been done, but because there is no record evidence that such has been done or executed, then the political office holder may be found liable.
Okay.
But there are also ways we can work together in harmony. While we are working for results, they are also fast-tracking the due processes. For instance, for example, why should you if you can do ministerial tenders both today, why should you delay it until next 2 weeks? You understand? If you do it today, it means you have shortened the 2 weeks. Within that 2 weeks, before you even think the 2 weeks to do it, the contractors will have mobilized. If it's a supply, they might have even supply. So this is what we are going to do in our current ministry is to see how we can align with each other, both the technocrats and the political head of the ministry.
I'm sure you've seen the stampedes all across the country. Is your ministry looking at innovative ways to share or to distribute this palliative or guidelines? It's something that will be
definitely it's an unfortunate situation, and it also called for sober reflection, and I will use this medium to condole all of us as Nigerians, because those that we have lost are our brothers, they are our people, they are our loved ones, and it's unfortunate it's happened like that. But you see, after saying that, definitely there must be a coordinated manner, and the ministry already we have our own procedure for sharing palliatives. I told you that I was in Plateau State. Minister was in Plateau State. You understand? So we develop a procedure that will improve safety. You understand? You see, average Nigerians sometimes, naturally, average Nigerian, if you is somebody that wants an ease in doing things. For instance, if you can have a Nigerian, if he can use a transport and go to Gwagwalada and get a difference of 200 naira. Even if that transportation will call him 300 naira, he will see that as a gain.
Right.
You understand? He will still go there. But when you add it up, you find that if he's to buy it here, he even have more, a balance of 100 naira. But that is the fact. So with that knowledge and the fact that really we have to do it in a coordinated manner. And the ministry has developed a standard procedure for sharing palliative.
Okay.
And once that is, we make it public, and we also work with security agencies to ensure that whenever palliative is going to be shared, those standard procedures which we consider as best practice is this thing. Meanwhile, let's agree that sharing palliative is not only akin to Africa or Nigeria.
Yes,
even in the world
we know that. Okay. With the new social register, how many Nigerians have you captured in the social safety net?
Yes, what I told you, we have captured about 15 million.
15 million,
yes,
okay.
Household. Now, what is
very small.
Yes, but what we are saying now, there are defects in that register, which we are now trying to control. And in the next few days, enumerators will go out to authenticate it. What is the authentication there is that out of this 15 million, very few have the digital identity. So we have to go back there, working together with the banks, working together with the World Bank, working together with the NIMSI, to ensure that whenever you enroll, you will be given your own digital identity so that whoever is going to be paid, that will be paid. And also, we are trying to see how do we now merge all of our social registers so that the NASCO, that is National Safety National Social Safety Net Coordinating Office, who have the mandate to develop the social register, will now capture everybody so that whoever wants, and that register will also have a handshake with others that are going for homegrown school feeding program, those who are going for give, and many other things, so that at least we can have a centralized system.
So you're still working on this, you haven't done it yet?
No, we are verifying. I told you, I said we are authenticating.
Okay.
The registrar was there in the next few days.
Okay.
In the next few days, because what we have, the digital machine that we have had right now, we have 1,000 on ground, and the World Bank has promised us in the next few we'll receive more delivery that will cover us to this and to cover most part of Nigeria.
Honorable Tanko Sununu, Minister of State for Poverty Alleviation and Humanitarian Affairs, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.